Hello and thanks for watching. Today we're going to fly into the zone at Birmingham. So I'm looking here to see there isn't any London control on at the moment. It's just Birmingham Tower. So I'm going to make a note of all their details. Then as usual on the Vatsim website I'm going to look for VFR procedures, get the CTR and VRP chart and the aerodrome chart. What we're planning today is probably the simplest of all the rejoins. There's just one controller to talk to. It's a nice quiet airport at the moment, so hopefully there won't be any conflicting traffic. So the plan is, this is what I'm expecting to happen. We'll depart Shobden on Unicom and then head towards Birmingham. This line is where I've estimated I'm 5 minutes away from the zone boundary. So before I get to there, I call in to Birmingham Tower, pass them my details and ask for permission to join. Once I've spoken to Tower and passed my message, I expect him to tell me to head towards a VRP. So I've identified from my charts where the VRPs are that we might be sent to. For this video I've made little markers for them on my little nav map, but you could just remember where they are, of course. So I'm expecting, because I'm coming in from the west, to be sent to Frankley Reservoirs. Once I get there, I expect that I will have to report my position, and then he will tell me I expect to head towards the aerodrome and report when I have it in sight. Once I'm close enough to confidently see it and identify where the runway is, I'll report that it's in sight, and at that point I would expect him to give me instructions to join the circuit pattern. If it's still runway 15 in use, I would expect him to tell me to join right downwind. Thought we'd have snow today in the simulator, just because it looks really good when you're in the air. The way that they've made the snow just sort of cluster around the edges of the grass and in the depressions of the fields, in the tyre tracks. Absolutely brilliant. So we've left Shobden, turning east now. Cap 413 gives some examples of the initial calls to a controller. So my call will just be the call signs and then request join. I suppose it might seem like a bit of a strange thing to say, request join, but I guess what it means is you're not actually asking for permission to land, you're asking for permission to join the circuit pattern. It might be that the controller is too busy to talk to you at that precise moment, or even too busy to listen. They might be doing something else, sorting out a clearance, be on the phone, making a cup of tea, whatever. So by keeping a short initial call, you're not tying up the frequency for something more urgent that might need to happen. Once the controller is then free to talk to you and ready, they usually ask you to pass your message. And Cap 413 goes on to say what details you should give in that message. Birmingham Tower, good afternoon. Golf Hotel Echo Romeo Charlie, request join.
Golf Hotel Echo Romeo Charlie Birmingham Tower, good afternoon to you. Pass me a message.
Golf Hotel Echo Romeo Charlie, Cessna 172, Shobden to Birmingham, 20 miles west, 2,000 feet QNH 1006, VFR, estimate zone boundary in 5 minutes, information November.
Golf Hotel Echo Romeo Charlie, thank you. Information November, current QNH 1006, runway 15 in use. Enter the control zone at your discretion via the Franklin Reservoir, not above altitude 1,500 feet. Report overhead the VRP.
Enter at my discretion via Franklin Reservoir and report overhead Franklin. Golf Hotel Echo Romeo Charlie.
Golf Echo Romeo Charlie, correct. Golf Romeo Charlie, traffic information is a Cessna 182 left-hand orbits, a beam the 15 threshold.
Roger, Golf Romeo Charlie.
And A5 ready for departure. Center 85 Papa, thank you.
Yeah, so you might notice that I'm doing this on the autopilot. So I don't think you should be worried about using the autopilot when you're flying. Because if you are spending a lot of time writing things down, looking at your notes about the things you might say and how to say it, looking at your charts, you're spending a lot of the time not looking out of the window, which obviously in the real world is a stupid thing to do and you wouldn't actually do that. But when you're learning on Vatsim, that's the priority, so I think it's absolutely fine to whack on your autopilot and let that hold your aircraft straight and true while you're concentrating on your bit of paper. Snow makes it harder to see things. Look at that. Look at the detail though. I mean, look, you see the paths across the fields.
Birmingham traffic, Birmingham's new QNH 1007.
Golf Hotel Echo Romeo Charlie, overhead reservoirs.
Romeo Charlie, thank you. Report the field in sight, no traffic.
Wilco, Golf Romeo Charlie. So we're just going to cross the zone boundary now, look. Yeah, that's it, isn't it? I can see the taxiways. Golf Romeo Charlie, field in sight.
Golf Romeo Charlie, thank you. Right downwind for runway 15, report final number 1, no traffic.
Right downwind for runway 15, number 1. Golf Romeo Charlie. And there's the runway. Looks like we're a little bit high. Don't turn that steep. Golf Romeo Charlie, final 15 to land.
Golf Romeo Charlie, surface winds 230 degrees 8 knots, runway 15 at clear to land.
Clear to land, runway 15, Golf Hotel Echo Romeo Charlie. Watch out for ice on the runway. Round out. Hold it off. Hold it off.
Golf Romeo Charlie, welcome to Birmingham, vacate right onto Lima.
Vacate right, Golf Romeo Charlie. So that must be this one that's coming up here. Hopefully Microsoft 2020 does not have any signs. But it's a big old 90-degree taxiway, so I think it must be it.
Romeo Charlie, continue, taxi Lima, Hotel Foxtrot, and park on the apron.
Lima, Hotel and Foxtrot to the apron. Golf Hotel Echo Romeo Charlie. Don't know why I used my full call sign there, don't have to. I still get a bit muddled and tongue-tied even though I've spent a lot of hours on Vatsim. Golf Romeo Charlie, shutting down on the apron. Many thanks for the service.
Golf Romeo Charlie, many thanks for flying to Birmingham. Have a good day. Cheerio, bye-bye.
So that's the fairly simple scenario of just having one tower controller on. But what if there was an approach controller, in this case Birmingham radar? So this is kind of what I would expect to happen. I thought it easiest just to do some diagrams and to type some text. Sorry, it's become more of a lecture than an actual video. So I would depart from Shobden on Unicom because it's not in controlled airspace. Once in the air, I'd make contact with Birmingham radar, and because this leg of the journey is quite short, I would ask them for a service. I'm going to ask for basic service and also for entry into the zone. They will control me as I approach the zone. They will give me a squawk, QNH. They'll tell me to come in via a certain VRP, just like Tower did. And then once I'm over the VRP, I would expect them to tell me to continue inbound to the aerodrome and to report when the airfield's in sight. Once that's happened, I would expect them to hand me off to Tower, who would give me permission to join the circuit. So at this point, obviously make sure that you've got your Tower frequency set in your standby so you can quickly switch between the two, because there won't be much time at this point. So when I'm ready to make contact with Birmingham radar, I'd say something like request basic service and zone entry. When they are free to talk to me, they'll ask me to pass my message. They might not do. Sometimes things don't always go according to this sort of scripted response. But I would expect them to say pass my message, and then I'd give the same information that I gave Tower. So I'd say who I was, where I was, my altitude and what QNH I'm using, that I'm VFR, and that I've got the current ATIS. I would expect them initially then to give you a squawk. Now, if you can, and it's not very easy in the simulator, enter that squawk as they say it, because that means they can then immediately identify you on their radar. If you can't, just write everything down and the identification process will just happen in the next stage. So after the squawk, they'll give permission to enter the control zone at a particular VRP, give you your flight rules, VFR, and an altitude restriction, what QNH to use, and then I'd expect them to say report overhead the VRP. After the readback, if you've managed to punch in your squawk quickly and they can see you on their radar screen identified, when they tell you that your readback's correct, I would also expect them to then say that you're under a basic service outside of controlled airspace, which you then reply basic service. Once over the VRP, as you cross into controlled airspace, I would expect to contact you to tell you that you're now in controlled airspace and you're under radar control. That basically means you're no longer at liberty to pootle about however you like. You are to fly as per their instructions, and they will watch you on the radar to make sure you comply. So entering a controlled airspace, radar control, continue inbound and report the field in sight. Then again, once you have the field confidently in sight, you can report that, and I would then expect them to tell you to contact Tower on the Tower frequency. Now, the use of the word contact is significant here. When a controller tells you to contact another controller, it means they have passed your details on, and the second controller is expecting you to call. So when I contact the tower, probably all that's necessary to say is your call sign. They don't need a report, they don't need you to request what you want, they should know it already. So here I've just put my Birmingham Tower and my call sign, and then because they know that you want to land at Birmingham and they know you've already got the correct ATIS, they'll just give you your joining instructions as they did when we did the video. And finally, we should consider what happens if there's no tower on and you are flying just under an approach controller, or equally this would apply to being under London control. So it actually makes things simpler, though these people might be quite busy. So it'd still take off on Unicom, still request a service from either Birmingham Radar or London Control, and request permission to enter the zone. And then once you get into the zone and you've got the field in sight, then they would give you your joining instructions, tell you how to join the circuit and give you permission to land. There wouldn't be any handoff. On the subject of London Control, I think you've got to be fairly sensible about this. London Control, even if it's just part of London Control, is covering a vast area, and they have a lot of VFR traffic and they can be extremely busy. So I think you've got to respect the fact that you can't dominate too much of their time, and if they are so busy that you're struggling to get a word in to request something, then that's probably a flag that your experience might be a little bit too stressful, because you might not be able to get as much of their attention as you want, and you might struggle to say the things that you want at the right time. So that might not be the best occasion to do some of your first flights on Vatsim. Okay, that's it. Bye bye.